tracks, stats, and facts. www.enterthedome.com.
Good people, what's going on? Episode 32, the Dome Podcast. Listen, man, have a heavyweight in the building tonight. Just what do you want? Tour manager, did everything in this game, in this culture you can think of. You know what I'm saying? I'm proud to have this brother on the show. We're going to get into some of his career, some of these highlights, Grammy Awards, writing credits, sign some of the people that you call legends now in this culture, A&R their careers. We're going to do this, man. My pleasure today. Dante Ross, man. What's good, my brother?
What up, Tony? How you doing?
Hey, man, everything's good, man. So listen, obviously, hip-hop 50. Yeah. 50 years in the culture, man. You grew up running around with Beastie Boys back in the 80s, man. But tell me, did you expect this culture, they call it a fad, Dante, did you expect in 2023 hip-hop globally would look like this and just everything like that? What's your whole thoughts on the whole genre at this point?
I mean, I thought hip-hop would be alive, just like, rock and roll's alive and soul music still lives on some level, even punk rock. So I didn't think it was going to go anywhere, but I didn't anticipate it becoming the main driver of pop culture. So globally, hip-hop is the main driver of pop culture. Everything in pop culture relates back to hip-hop. And this is something I never thought would happen. This is what surprises me more than anything, because Katy Perry will make a record that has an element of hip-hop in it, or whomever it is. Lady Gaga or any and everyone always needs, they need that little sprinkle of hip-hop in everything because it is the driver of pop culture. And we know this, whether it's movies or even you listen to sports announcers, it has touched every part of mainstream culture. And this is what I did not anticipate. I never thought it'd be that. Look, I always thought that hip hop would live and survive as it moved towards the mainstream in the 90s. I thought that it would be around, but did I think it would be the main driver of pop culture in every facet? No. And I think anyone who tells you they did is lying.
Right. Yeah, man, because I just remember spinning on cardboard boxes back in 84, 85, watching Beat Street, watching Breaking. And it felt like leisure. It felt like fun. And then records became bigger, of course, with Def Jam. We'll talk about that, and LL, and everything started taking off. But to your point, man, I could have never imagined as a kid to almost 50 years old now saying, yo, this is really the music of the world.
Yeah, it's globally it's everywhere. You go anywhere in the world and you will hear hip hop. And, hip hop always changes, mutates, evolves, de-evolves. It's always, and technology is always probably one of the main agents of change. Technology is always at the centerpiece of hip hop changing and transforming and mutating. But it's not going anywhere. And it will just continue to, transform and mutate, whether we like it or not, because hip hop is, it's run by the kids. We don't run it. They run it. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. So, yeah, I can hear you pretty good. So, pre-hip hop, I was looking back at your life and information, man. I noticed that, and correct me if I'm wrong, your father and mother was kind of activists, and they was kind of involved in, in community and things like that.
100%. 100%.
So is it true that your father was friends with like Bobby Seale and Stokely Carmichael? And is that correct?
Yeah. 100%, but we called Stokely is called Corey Tunda. We don't call him Stokely. That's his government name. So
right.
He was a family friend of mine, of my mother and my father, as was Bobby Seale, and my dad also knew Eldridge Cleaver and a lot of others. But Bobby Seale was a friend of my father's, as was a guy who was one of the Chicago A with him, a guy named David Dillinger, and my dad was friends with all of them, as well as Brother Stokely, who would come to our house when he was in America. He lived in Africa. He moved to Africa, married Miriam Makeba, but he would come to my house and give us like presents and stuff coming from Africa to do things in America. He was a wonderful guy. And my dad knew a lot of like serious activists, whether it was the Zapatistas or the Black Panthers. He was involved with the Weather Underground, SDS and various other things. So he was, he knew Roy Innis and and the guys who started SNCC and all this other stuff. He was a pretty heavy cat. My dad corresponded with Geronimo Pratt for 20 years before he got out and knew Geronimo well. So, my dad was he was really involved in it. My mom was equally involved in a different way. She literally taught school in my neighborhood in the Lower East Side, and she helped start the credit union because a lot of people in my neighborhood couldn't put money in the bank. So we had credit unions for people who couldn't put money in the bank. They got credit unions in, and because people were paid in cash or whatever it was. So my mom helped start the credit union on the Lower East Side. It was a community activist and friends with the Young Lords and lots of other people in my neighborhood. She was part of the movement, as was my father. And I grew up on picket lines and going to protests and going to March on Washington and all that shit. My parents were hippies and activists. And that was just the thing that they did. And it was like I grew up surrounded by it. So I am I don't want to say I'm an activist because I don't want to compare myself to my parents. And they really lived being an activist, but I am politically aware and completely active and involved in politics and social consciousness. And my parents were as well. It's just a lineage my parents set for me.
Well, let me ask you a question. Did you realize, at what age did you realize, like, this is Bobby Seale, this is these different individuals who end up being a big part of, the African-American community and civil rights?
I think I started to realize this in high school, maybe about 14 or 15. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. My mom told me to read it, and reading that and seeing friends of mine becoming 5%ers and seeing what was going on in New York with the Yusuf Hawkins things and all the stuff that was going on, all the there was a lot of bullshit going on, and I think those things politicized me, and I became aware that I had a connection to kind of the root note of a lot of this stuff. My parents were really involved in it, so it just made sense for me to be politically aware and socially conscious. No, it's probably why I love rap music so much.
And that's why I was about to ask you. And that's what I didn't mean to cut you off. What I was about to ask you was, with parents that kind of worldly and hippie and stuff like that, what type of music did they listen to? Because I'm sure at some point that was influencing you.
Oh, yeah. So my mom loves soul music. She loved Marvin Gaye and Donny Hathaway.
My favorite.
Stevie Wonder. So I grew up listening to all of that. Like my mom, Ann Peebles, Aretha Franklin, Bill Withers. She played all of this stuff, as well as stuff like Bob Dylan and Van Morrison and James Taylor, Joni Mitchell. She liked singer-songwriters and soul music. And my dad liked jazz. He's listening to John Coltrane and Miles Davis and Charles Mingus and things like that. I mean, he likes soul music too, but he was a big jazz guy.
Did you become a big jazz fan?
I didn't understand jazz till I got older, and my dad turned me on to John Coltrane, Giant Steps, when I was in high school, because I was kind of into Jimi Hendrix, and he told me there's a connection between them, and I heard the connection when I listened to him. I listened to Giant Steps and Favorite Things endlessly since I was a kid, and still continue to listen to those records. And as I got older, I understood jazz more and more. When I was a child, it was a little too complicated or obtuse for me. As I got older, I got to understand it.
It's funny you said John Coltrane. I know we spoke before we started the show, and me being in North Carolina and in Winston-Salem growing up, John Coltrane was born in High Point, North Carolina, about 30 miles from here. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Oh, they love him here.
I thought it was from Philadelphia for some reason.
He ended up migrating up north, but he's from High Point, North Carolina. And there's a small city here also called Rocky Mount, where Thelonious Monk is from, and several other jazz legends as well. So North Carolina has a rich jazz history down here, and which takes me to me loving the jazz that end up influencing hip hop, and a lot of producers, and we're gonna get to some of that too, that started infusing that jazz sound into the hip hop records, man. And I gravitated to that because, just like you, Dante, growing up, I didn't understand jazz until I got to college. I was in college when I really appreciated the sound of jazz, the deep details in the jazz, and the musicians. I didn't understand that in high school. I was listening to, Eric B. and Rakim.
Yeah. I mean, it's cerebral music, right? It's very cerebral.
It takes a certain level of consciousness to me, and maturity to truly appreciate jazz music.
100%. You have, and a lot of the jazz that was sampled for records that even I was making and artists I work with. And so that was the kind of jazz my dad didn't really dig. My dad he didn't really like Grover Washington, right? He was like, Grover Washington's corny, but he did like Tribe Called Quest. When I turned him on to Tribe Called Quest, So my dad, he was more of a bebop guy. He didn't really love the soul funk jazz from the 70s all that much. There was some of it he liked, but for the most part, he was more of a purist.
So then, with you, did you ever like listen to like Paul Hardcastle, any of those type of
Oh
styles of
yeah, yeah.
jazz?
I loved all the like. It's funny because I'm going to DJ in Salt Lake City tomorrow, and I have my Paul Hardcastle record in my
He's dope,
bag of
man.
45s. I mean, I won those two records, 19 and Hard Rain, or what is it, Rainforest. Those two records are
Rainforest, yeah, that
incredible.
was beautiful.
I mean, we used to breakdance in Rainforest. We would pop to that record. That
Yeah,
was
that was
like one of the
beautiful,
records.
man.
Yeah, that's like IOU and Freeze and all the electro stuff. That was a weird record. It's a jazzy record, but because of the 808, it's like an electro record. So,
Yeah.
that got played. I mean, African Bambaataa played that shit at the Roxy. It was one of those records.
Mm-hmm. Wow, man. So look, I'm gonna go back in time a little bit to your early days in New York City.
Sure.
Now, get into the culture. I know you was running with the Beastie Boys. I know you was doing some
Yeah.
graffiti. I know you was doing some punk.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you was in the streets. You know what I'm saying? So you was a
I was
kid.
outside before it was a word.
You was
Before they
outside
said
before
this-
the word
I
became
was
famous.
outside my whole life. Yeah,
Yeah, you was outside before people started saying that recently.
Yeah, exactly.
You know
I
what
mean,
I'm saying?
look, I had hippie parents, so they weren't really controlling. Like, so I had a lot of freedom, probably a little too much freedom, to be honest.
Right.
But my household is a little dysfunctional, so I kind of did what I wanted to do. If
Yeah.
something interested me, I did it. So yeah, I mean, I was running around New York. Really started in the '70s, late '70s, but the '80s, New York was really fucked up. It was super broke.
Right.
It was like, man, burnt out buildings. And
It was the message about Grandmaster Flash and Melly
yeah,
Mel.
exactly. It was fucked up. It was definitely super scrappy, and I loved it. I thought it was great, and I think from that dysfunction and economic challenges
Yeah.
that the city was going through, we got punk rock, new wave, and hip hop. And to me, early hip hop is really just black punk rock because it's do it yourself music, and older black people would be like, that shit ain't music. They ain't playing
Right.
instruments. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, that's not music. What are they doing? And that's what they said about punk rock. That's
Well,
not
you can-
music. They don't know how to play. So, and there's this one moment in time in like 82, 83, 84, as early as 81, Blondie makes Rapture,
Yep.
where punk rock becomes new wave, and 80, 81, white new wave groups start realizing how cool hip hop is, and they start looking to it for inspiration. And we get like Genius of Love by Tom Tom Club.
Yeah.
We get the Talking Heads playing some funky ass shit like Once in a Lifetime.
Yep.
We get Rapture. It goes to England. We get Malcolm McLaren. We get Paul Hardcastle.
Yep.
We get all these cool kind of hybrid things that are obviously inspired by hip hop. And this is, to me, the moment in time that I came of age. And when, to me, the mainstreaming of hip hop, the early adapters, the cool white people discovered this thing, much like the cool white people got hip to rock and roll, and they helped change the culture of music. And this is, I think, one of the things that happened with hip hop. Don't get it fucked up. It's completely a black art form, but this early adapters
Absolutely.
the kind of hippest people in the world.
Yeah.
Because downtown New York is the hippest people in the world. This opens the gates for this thing to start to grow and grow and grow.
Absolutely. Blondie played a major part. And a lot of people don't understand that. And for any listeners, you need to go back and do your knowledge on Blondie, because she embraced hip hop and Fab Five Freddy and a lot of things that was going on in the streets at the time, man. And
1980.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, the vibe at the Roxy and clubs like that was and that's like 81, but it was so welcoming, and it was like a real hodgepodge of cultures meeting. It was a high level of cultural exchange was going on in New York City, and I think later in London, kind of emulating New York. And this cultural exchange made for some of the most interesting art and music ever, whether it's Keith Haring or Basquiat or Ramal Z or Lee Kionis or whoever, and music like the Soul Sonic Force, which is using craft work, right? So hip hop is a collage, and this was part of the collage of hip hop.
Let me ask you a question though. When your first time you heard the Rapper's Delight, though, what was your thoughts on that?
It sounded like someone talking over disco. It was a disco record. It was a disco party record, and a lot of early rap was party music. So it will get played at the party. So you go to your junior high school party and they play a couple of rap records. They play maybe they play that or Apache by them or Super Rhymes or
Right.
Spoon and Rap or Love Rap, whatever it is, Treacherous 3. They play these early rap records, Jimmy Spicer, etc.
What was that Treacherous 3 song, man? Was it Body Rock or something like that?
Body Rock, yeah, and that's even a little after. Like Body Rock was big, but Love Rap was really a joint by
Right.
Spoonie, and that was the one. But all those records got played, man. Those are party records, and they kind of played them right. You played that right alongside Parliament Funkadelic. Rick
Well,
James, right? It's like,
did the message make it seem like it was real after that? When you heard the message, that okay, now it's serious or what?
Yeah, it was the first one with social commentary. But I was already into rap. We love rap music. Rap music was like in England, the punk rock kids was listening to dub, reggae. We were listening to rap in New York, and the radio. We listened to black radio, and a black radio station in New York played the new wave records we liked. They played The Clash, Magnificent Seven, and Genius of Love, and all these records. So it was it was like I said, a cultural exchange, and rap music was a strong part of it. We love rap music. We loved it since we were probably in junior high school, since 1979, 1980. And I always loved it. There was a point in time when it got a little too musical, and people forget this, like around 83, 82, 83, it's getting real musical, and dudes are kind of dressing kind of like a broke Rick James.
Yep.
It's a little
It was
corny.
a suspect time.
It's a little sus. I didn't know if rap was going to make it through. I was like, I wanted to hear shit that sounded more like Grandmaster Flash. It was groovier to me than Soul Sonic Force.
Yeah.
Right? It was more my cup of tea. But then Run DMC comes out.
But before that, when was your first break into the industry, though?
So I didn't get a gig working in the industry until after that. So maybe 87, 86, 87. I was running around with the Beastie Boys, and I knew Run DMC. I knew J and D and Run.
Okay.
I used to hang out with Jay. I lived downtown, and I was a ball player, and Jay and me would go play ball. He was like a freight train. You couldn't stop him. He's a grown man when we're still weighing 140 pounds, right?
Right.
So he's a grown ass man. So I was running around with those guys, and I loved the group that people forget sometimes is Houdini. So Houdini was right there with Run DMC.
Amazing.
They were the two biggest before LL and the Beasties.
Yep.
I fucking loved Houdini. Houdini was, they had a little sex appeal in their music. It
was special, man. Underrated.
They're look, Diddy's whole thing is Houdini. Like they were the first aspirational rap group, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the groups we listened to. And of course there were others, Funky 4 Plus One More and Fat Boys who people write off because they made novelty records. But at first they were dope. The Disco 3.
Absolutely.
Stick 'em was crazy. Can You Feel It? Curtis Blow, who I saw open for The Clash at the Pier in 1981, I think. Might have been 82, I think 81. So, man, we loved all that shit. And then, it started to get this weird place. And then, bong, Run DMC came out. And they changed everything. And to me, that's when I knew it was a lifestyle that wasn't going to go away. Because much like punk rock, the walls had been torn down. And they looked like the audience. And they seemed like they were right there with you. So that thing made them more relatable. So I think, I don't think I was conscious of it then, but they were like the first group I religiously loved.
Me too.
Like I loved them the way I love Parliament Funkadelic or The Clash.
Right.
Like they were like, I was like, this is my group.
Yeah, man. When Run DMC popped off, I immediately fell in love with the self-titled album. But by the time King of Rock came out, I was sold. They were everything to me. My brother's 7 years older than me. He's the DJ. That's when he taught me how to scratch and shit over Run DMC records. And of course, when Raising Hell came, it made hip hop global to me. That was a concert rap there for me.
I mean, yeah, that's when they started playing arenas by themselves. Like they didn't need 5 other rap groups to play the arena, and it like Raising Hell was like, that was when Middle America got it. The first record though that ever goes in rotation on MTV is Rock Box by Run DMC.
Yes.
And that's the one that really that's when guys from like Guido's in Brooklyn were like, I like those Run DMC guys. Like that's when it went wide. It started to get wider. You could see it
Right.
just spreading. The culture was getting bigger and bigger. And Run DMC to me is the big agent of change. They're the first super agent of change in hip hop to me. Like and I liked hip hop a lot before Run DMC, but Run DMC, that's when I signed on for life because I could dress like Run DMC.
Right.
I was a b-boy. I dressed like a b-boy. So
Right.
when Run DMC came out dressed like b-boys, it was like, okay, that's it. Like it's all good.
Yeah, they wasn't dressed like Cameo and shit.
No,
Like
they
a
were
lot of
just-
early hip hop acts.
Yeah, they were just like like Parliament or some shit. It was like
So
know.
during that time, Run DMC, correct me if I'm wrong, they were on Profile, but you ended up starting to do like some work with at Def Jam, correct?
So I started working at Def Jam right after Raising Hell came out. I started working at Rush Productions. The Beasties, Rick finds them because they had Cookie Puss. He starts to mold them, kind of Rick and Russell, and
Yeah.
I'm around them. I'm like one of the crazy friends, but I'm smart enough to maybe know I could get a job doing this. I grew up always reading the back of records, so I want to be one of them guys whose name's on the back of records.
Right.
Rick and Sam Sever, who was working with Mantronics, were inspiring to me because I saw them doing stuff. And I was like, well, I might not be able to produce records today, but I'm going to learn as much as I can and get in where I fit in. And I managed to do that. The Beasties helped me get a job at Rush Productions. I was a waiter. I was always in trouble because I was a wild kid. Like I was way wilder than they were. And they were like, we got to help my man get his shit together. So they got me a job and helped me
before you
get
get locked up.
I have been locked up a few times. I'd always go to I've been in central bookings several times and was on probation and all this shit. So
Right.
yeah, it was like I was like my next fuck up. I was going to jail, so, and they got to real jail, not like baby jail. So
Right.
and they helped me get a job, and I calmed my ass down a little bit because I had a job.
Was you working on a Leo at the time? Leo Cohen's at the time.
I worked for Leo Cohen.
So you was there for how long?
I worked there for close to 2 years, a year and change, and then I went to work at Tommy Boy.
So at Tommy Boy, is that when you doing A&R work, signing De La Soul and Queen Latifah and
all that
Digital Underground? Talk to me about that little time period with Tommy Boy.
So Monica signed De La, but she made them the first group I worked on. Monica Lynch signed De La, but she dropped them in my lap, and she played me their demo when I applied for the job. Daddy-O from Stetsasonic lined me up for an interview. He was my boy.
Okay.
I've been on tour with Daddy-O, Eric B. and Rakim, Houdini, all them dudes, with this guy named Tony Rome, who they shot on Black Stealing in our cast. Said, and Tony Rome said the FBI was bugging my phone.
Yeah.
So he was LL's road manager. And Tony loved me. I don't know. Tony just liked me, man. He was my boy. And because Tony was like, he could ask me to do something and I'll do it. Right? Like I would be like always a lot, he was the one dude who I connected with. So he took me on the road and I was like, he ran the whole tour and I was like his little slave, like his son. Like, but yo, man, it's how I met everyone. He was like, yo, wake up everyone for radio in the morning, make sure they're in the lobby. We're going to run to the radio station.
Right.
So I'm going with Tony Rome to the radio station with Eric B. and Rakim and Stetsasonic and whoever's on tour. So from there, I knew everyone. I got to know everyone. Hip hop's about this big, the industry. Right. I'm in the middle of it. I know everyone. And there's not a lot of white dudes out there. And it was like, other than the Beastie Boys, there was no white dudes like me. Right. So, like a Manhattan kid who's, look, I grew up playing ball. I'm funny. I got snaps. You can snap on me all day. I'm going to throw it back at you. So,
They rock with you. People rock with you.
Yeah, exactly. People like me because I'm funny. And I was cool. I was good with the girls. I had a lot of game. So all that worked in my favor. And, man, Daddy-O loved me. And we would have these him and Chucky have these long philosophical discussions. Mm-hmm. And he lined me up for the job. I got the job. And De La was the first thing I started running with. But shortly thereafter, 45 King dropped Latifah in my lap.
Wow.
And I signed Latifah. Look, they played me her and Fat Five Freddy and 45 King played me Wrath of My Madness and Princess of the Posse over the phone.
Mhm.
She came to meet me. 45 King brought half the flavor unit with me. He did, because I was like, I'll sign them all.
Right.
He played me. I would have signed Show Rob G, but he was signed already. But they played me those records, and Monica was like, "You need to sign her." And I was like, "I'm already there," and we signed her. It was a pretty easy deal to do. And right off rip, right after we made that record, it was like I had the De La record. Literally, I sent it to Red Alert, and he called me up. He said, "I like this."
Which record is this, Dante?
Plug Tuning. So
Okay, Plug Tuning.
So I sent it to him, and he's like, "I like this." He said, "I'm gonna play this." I thought that means he's gonna play it in a couple of days. He played it that day.
Wow.
Right? And I was like, "Wow." And everyone was like, "Yo, oh my God!" And he ran with it. So then I sent him Latifah. It was a new music seminar, and we got the test pressings the day of the new music seminar right then. And I went around and passed them out to everyone. By the end of the new music seminar, which lasted a week, that record was everywhere. Every DJ was playing that shit across the country. And that record became a hit. Red Alert embraced it. He played it nonstop, both sides. So
That's big.
I was 2 for 2. That's as big as it could get back then.
Right.
And then we put out Potholes in My Lawn, and that goes on daytime radio. And that connects in LA. Plug Tuning does too. So does Latifah. So, I'm like, I'm on. Like, I got it. Like, I'm good.
Let me ask you a question. So, did Prince Paul produce 3 Feet High and Rising?
Yes, 100%.
When you first heard the completed project, did you realize how special it was going to be?
Well, I heard it the whole time we were making it. And I said this the other day that the bar was set very high for me early on in my life. Like I was kind of around the Beastie Boys when they made it, and then I'm like around Public Enemy when they're making it. Like I'm like, I have Public Enemy's tape 6 months before it comes out, and I'm like their first fan in Lower Manhattan who's not in the Beastie Boys.
Right.
Like I love them. So I already knew what greatness was.
Mm.
And I felt like De La Soul was just as great as all that.
Wow.
So did I know how great it was? I knew it was as good as all the shit I was around.
Wow.
So that to me says I knew it was great, but I think I took for granted how great everything that was surrounding me was. Wow. I just and it's funny where like I think about a group like Stetsasonic,
underrated,
or even say JVC Force. So to me, those guys, Super Level C, they were great too, right? But they didn't go as big. But the energy of all the music at that time was great. Like you couldn't tell me back then that Dougie Fresh wasn't going to become a superstar like these dudes were. I thought he was gonna, because he was just as talented, if not more talented.
And he could perform.
Right? He was the best performer of everybody. Him and Kane were the best. So to me, it was like, man, the whole music that surrounded me was so special. But De La Soul, I knew they were special because they were different, and the people that liked them, like, were people who didn't necessarily like rap.
Right.
Like my weird white friends would like De La Soul.
Yeah.
My weird ass white friends were like, that De La Soul is really cool.
And that Me, Myself, and I video helped too, because it's very eccentric.
I mean, Me, Myself, and I, though, it's funny because the video may be eccentric, but that's accessible record because it's a Parliament sample, right? Like everyone knows that record. Everyone's mom has that. Everyone got that record in their house. So everyone knows that record. It wasn't like an obscure sample like Plug Tuning or Potholes. So,
and then you got Say No Go. That's Hall & Oates.
Yeah, well, they're the first band to sample the crazy white guys who aren't just making breaks, right? So, because obviously, like, When the Levee Breaks by Zeppelin, or there's lots of breaks, dudes, or The Big Beat by Billy Squier, like, Aerosmith, Walk This Way. They used to call that Rocks. It was on the album Rocks. Toys in the Attic. That break was called Toys in the Attic. Or Steve Miller Band had the breaks, Take the Money and Run. So, there was breaks, but these dudes were taking shit that wasn't the break, like Say No Go and, the Steely Dan shit.
Yeah.
And I Know. So De La was different.
I love that song.
De La was looking at it with a different lens, They were besides the Beasties, the most creative guys I'd ever seen.
I could see that. Now, question for you: while you still at Tommy Boy, how did you guys get, I guess, the information for Digital Underground? Did you get a demo of theirs, or how did that happen?
A guy named Adrian Gregory was NWA's tour manager. he had TNT Records. A guy who worked with Ed Strickland was friends with him. He sent us their first record, and we thought it was cool. But then we heard Underwater Rhymes. They sent us that.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first one. And then they sent us a demo of Do What You Like after we had shown interest. And Ed played it for all of us, and we loved it. And I played it for De La, and Paz and them was like, you better sign them. And I was like, and then it was like a group decision to sign them. Unfortunately, I left before the album came out, but I definitely was a champion for them. And a guy named Easy Ed Strickland was one of the guys who brought it in. So Ed was a promo guy, and we all liked it. You know, it was like, he was like, I think you'll like this. And we ended up digging it, and it became the thing.
Yeah, Shock G, man, rest in peace, was very, very underrated as a musician, man, as an artist.
Yeah.
Dude was very talented, man. I think a lot of people
play
realize
piano
that.
like a motherfucker.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah, you know, and on Do What You Like, it's Rodney Franklin playing that piano.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that was just, they were like somehow friends. I don't know, man. Shock G was a very, very interesting and talented dude. He's a great artist, too. I don't know if you know that. He did all the covers. He did all the covers. He did all that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's a great illustrator. He's a super otherworldly talent. He's a super amazing cat. Unfortunately, you know, he had some problems as he got older, but what a talented guy. What a genius.
Absolutely, man. So when you said something just now about leaving, is that when you went to Electro Records? You're on your way to that? Now, so this is what I want to talk about, because during your time here, I know, and doing some research, man, you was very busy at Electro Records.
I was,
because I'm saying that you was signed. It was a Grand Poobah, the Brand Nubians, KMD, Busta Rhymes. I mean, tell me about that whole Pete Rock and CL Smooth. Is that correct?
Yeah. You forgot the biggest one of all.
Tell me.
Old Dirty Bastard.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So
yeah, just give me a rundown of that experience.
You know, I walked in there. This guy named Raul Roach. He was Max Roach's son, the famous jazz drummer. He was a friend of mine. He was trying to hire this other guy, Gary Harris, who's from North Carolina.
Okay.
Who passed away. Rest in peace, Gary. He was my man, and Gary was flaky. He missed all the meetings, so he went to the next guy, and he knew me a little bit, and people spoke highly of me, and he saw what I was doing at Tommy Boy, and he asked me if I was interested. I'd been offered a job prior at Capitol, and I was thinking about doing it. This guy, Tim Carr, the guy who stole the Beastie Boys from Def Jam like a thief in the night, he offered me a job. But my lawyer said, Tim might not be there that long.
Right.
So you might want to think twice about that job. So I thought twice about it. But he offered me $65,000. So I knew I could get paper. I was making dog shit at Tommy Boy. I was still selling weed, like I was fucking whatever. So Pete Nice was my partner in my weed business at one point.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, me and Pete had the long story. Me and Pete always had a scheme. Pete was my partner in many schemes back then. We were super tight. We're still really tight. He's a great dude. So I ended up like meeting this guy Bob Krasnow. He ran a label. I liked him. He liked me. I thought he was a good dude. He offered me $75,000, which was $45,000 more than I was making $30,000. Yeah, so it was $45,000 more, $30,000. So $45,000 to $50,000 more than I was making. $45,000, I think, and I took the job. No questions asked. And the first artist I signed was a flop. Her name was Shazzy, and it flopped. A female rapper. I was trying to replicate Latifah. The record was okay. I thought I might get fired. I was hitless for almost a year, but after the record came out, it ended up on the New York Times Best Albums of the Year list, and then the Village Voice, which used to hold a lot of weight.
Yeah,
Robert Christgau, he was the dean of music critics.
He's a tough critic.
He was like an A minus or an A. He put in his top 20 end of the year. Yeah, and right. You tell me, right? But here's the funny thing. I thought the record was a Frisbee. She didn't listen. The record was meh. Me and my peoples was like, whatever. I produced the whole album. So I was like, I produced the flop. I hired myself. I might be out of here. The people were talking. The chatter was going. But when it ended up on those lists, my boss in the meeting was like, And Dante ended up on, and his record was on the 2 most important critical lists of the year. And people was like looking at me like the kid's still got a job.
You're gonna stick around for a while.
Right. And I had signed Brand Nubian during this time.
Yeah.
And Brand
Did
Nubian.
somebody pass you Brand Nubian demo or something like that? Or
Nah, Grand Poobah. I loved Master Ceremony. I knew they broke up. I was gonna maybe sign him to Tommy Boy, and he came and brought me the demo. It was Brand Nubian. And I asked him to wait up because I was gonna make a move and come with me. And he did. And we signed. I signed Shazzy and Brand Nubian right away. But Brand Nubian was they were a problem for the label. They were militant young black men.
Yeah.
5%ers. They scared the shit out of everyone at the job except me. I thought that they busted my balls. They didn't scare me. But we ended up becoming really good friends. And our first single flop too, Feels So Good, didn't pop.
Right.
But as we got closer to making an album.
What was the second single? Was it Sunshine?
Yes, Wake Up.
Wake Up.
That connected. Once again, thanks to
oh my God, that was huge.
My friend Red Alert, who also played Feel So Good. But Red Alert, my champ, breaks the record and the record's a hit. And so,
we love it down here in NC. We love Brand Nubians down here, man.
That shit was big all down the East Coast. That was a big record. And, that's a fucking fantastic record. It's like, see, that's one when I was in the middle of making it, I was like, this is a great record. Like, I knew it was great because I'd had a flop. So I knew what a bad record was. So I knew what a good one felt like, and I knew what a bad one felt like now. So I was
after that first One for All album, when Puba went solo, didn't you executive produce Real to Real?
I executive produced Real to Real and Brand Nubian first record, One for All.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did, and a lot of people thought I was crazy making a Brand Nubian record without Grand Poobah, but I made it. I rolled the dice. I felt they deserved a shot, and I will say that I think that second Brand Nubian album might be better than Real to Real. I loved.
Is that the one with Love Me and Leave Me Alone on it?
And Punks Jump Up.
And Punks Jump Up.
So those records are both like Poobah. We expected more. So to me, a little underwhelming. Brand Nubian people expected less, and it really was great. So
it really was.
It exceeded expectations. So to me, I was always a little partial to that record. But I put those records out, and in the middle of that, with the Brand Nubian record, I signed Pete Rock and Leaders, and fucking Pete Rock, man. My friend Raul Roach, who I love, he wanted to sign him. He brought it in because he loved Heavy D and the boys.
Right.
And he met Eddie F, and he wanted to be in business with them. He was more of an R&B dude. He was like Keith Sweat's A&R guy and a bunch of people. And he was like, I want to sign this, but you got to co-sign it with me. And I was like, bet, it's good. And we co-signed it. And then he left to go be the head of A&R at Quest Records for Quincy Jones. So I was there with Pete Rock, and they made the EP.
Yeah, the EP.
We put out
Go With all the Flow. Sold out?
Yep. We put out Go With the Flow first. Didn't work, but the B-side was The Creator.
The Creator.
And they flipped it around. It got flipped around. Flex started banging The Creator. Then we resurfaced the 12-inch of just The Creator with the remix. Two versions. And it was a hit record in New York.
Y'all did a video for The Creator too, didn't you?
Yeah, I don't know about that. Video's a little weird. A little hokey. But I didn't love the video. But the record connects and it starts to go. So before we put out Mecca and the Soul Brother, we already had a hit. We knew we had energy. We had a buzz. And in the middle of this, I put out KMD and Leaders. And Leaders is the one that the most frustrating band I ever worked with because they should have been huge. And
was it Charlie Brown, man? Tell me the truth.
It was Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was impossible, and he inspired other members to be impossible. And they the first record was good, not great. It could have been bigger. They were fantastic live.
Right.
They could make great songs. I always felt like there's a couple groups that were like the Leaders at the same time. Fushnikins.
Yeah.
Far Side. But I felt the Leaders were the best of those groups. And the Far Side was far more successful. But the Leaders were better to me. We didn't have a passing me by. We didn't have it.
That was massive because y'all had PTA, right? That was the one sob story.
Sob story didn't really work. We thought it was going to work.
It didn't really work. PTA was pretty good.
PTA worked. Sob story I thought was a radio record. It didn't work. I listened to it recently. I still sound like a radio record to me. I don't know why. Elektra's promo staff was relatively shitty, to be honest. They didn't really bring a lot of records home. But the gift and the curse scenario. So it's a gift and a curse.
That's a breakout.
It's a gift and a curse. Buster has the standout verse. Tip hands him the alley-oop.
Yep.
Like he's like, here's the dime, take it home.
He did.
Destroys. He kills it. And you go to a club and you just hear that verse. You might not hear anything else. Whatever tensions were already there,
they made it worse.
Up. Yeah, and Buster was beyond loyal. I don't care what anyone of those guys ever have to say about anything. He was super loyal. I offered him a solo deal pretty early on. I think when they did Time and came back with the first version of it, me and Chris Lighty offered him a solo deal. I was like, look, he got to go solo one day. And me and Chris started talking to him, and it took him like 2.5 years to make a solo record.
But then he said he didn't want to do it, did he?
Nah. He didn't want to do it, because he was younger than everyone. He's a year younger. He was a little scared, and he was loyal. And he didn't. And those guys finally look, if Charlie Brown wasn't a dick, they might still be a group. He's just not a good. He's just impossible and very competitive.
And that was the word on the streets. I remember people saying that.
Look, he broke the band up live on Yo MTV Raps. Go watch.
I remember.
He broke the band up live. Who does that?
Ridiculous, man. I remember.
Yeah, his maturity wasn't there, and the rest is history.
Well, it's unfortunate. It could have been larger.
I've been accused of breaking up leaders. I did not break up leaders. And
let the record show.
If me and Chris Lighty broke up leaders, well, we did it because Buster should have been solo. And I have no regrets about what happened at all.
Look at his career now.
100%. And
it is what it is.
And he's still my really good friend. Go on my Instagram. He's throwing fire on there every day. It's my guy. That's my little bro, man. He's my little bro for life. And I love the guy. Me and him went through a lot together. And I always had his back, and he always has mine. So whatever happened.
That's respect, man. So and too,
KMD's in there too. And
that's what I was about to say, man. When you think about the MF Doom at some point,
man,
turned his whole career to something totally different, man. Could you have foreseen that?
I mean, man, no one could have seen that.
Right.
I knew he was really dope. I knew him and Sub Rock were really talented and special people because, well, for one, they were maybe the smartest kids I'd ever met. They were so young and so intellectually advanced. It was unbelievable. They were like little scientists. And the way they made music was they were like yin yang. One dude starts it, one guy finishes it, one guy starts it, other guy finishes it. The way they did everything. It was beyond chemistry. It was like telepathy.
Right.
They were more like twin brothers than brothers. It was really wild. And also super smart. And, they were part of the Ansar Allah community. And all my groups had a notion of Black consciousness. We're the 5% or Ansar Allah. They all had that notion of consciousness, and they were just great kids. I loved them. I had a real affinity for them. I taught Subrock how to use the MPC. He bought when I had the 60 and I got the 3000, and I showed him how to use the 60 and sold it to him. Those guys would stay at my house. I loved them. And Subrock got killed, got hit by a car under weird circumstances.
Yeah.
Look, me and Pete Nice, and we put up some money to bury him, and we still didn't have enough money. And I passed the hat at work, and all my coworkers chipped in, and we helped bury his brother.
Wow.
And he went and finished that record after his brother died, and he runs into all the bullshit behind the cover, Black Bastards. Terry Rossi and Havelock Nelson vilify the artwork. They vilify me. They never talked to him about it. Never talked to me. Never talked to Pete. No, it's conviction without investigation. Insult to injury. They're grown Black folks, and he's a young Black man who just lost his brother with a political message. and a distinct political ideology. Instead of asking him what his messaging is about, they vilified him. And to me, it was complete bullshit, generational bullshit.
Right.
And he got dropped from the label, got back his masters, but he's blackballed, more or less because of the Billboard shit. He can't get another record deal. The record's fucking genius, and we was as far as to, we were about to make the jackets. We had the promo tapes out, so he gets dropped. I mean, that's how close it was to coming out, and he goes underground for a few years and comes back as MF Doom. Right, he's becomes one of the most important underground rappers of all time.
Absolutely, yeah.
Your favorite rapper's favorite rapper,
right?
And to me, it's like the story of the blues. Like the blues is like, you take all that pain and suffering that's like, thrust upon you, all the shit you're subjected to as a black man in America or black person in America, and you take that and you create this beautiful art out of it. So that's what he did. Just like the Last Poets or Gil Scott-Heron or John Coltrane or John Lee Hooker, he's a griot to me, and he took all that pain and suffering and he channeled it into reinventing himself as MF Doom, the supervillain. Right. So, it's like a double negative becomes a positive. He gets treated like shit, and then he becomes a supervillain. Those two negatives become a positive, MF Doom, and he's just a genius for it all.
And then establish a cult following. You know what I'm saying? Globally, man, people love MF Doom, man, to this day.
I mean, he also he changed the way he rapped. Like I worked with Zev Love X. I didn't work with MF Doom as a rapper. I was friends with MF Doom, the rapper. Man, he's a genius, man. He's one of the pure geniuses I've worked with, and I've had like a life that's been able to interact with a lot of genius. My life is, if nothing else, a life well lived. I've been able to help some great artistry, come to the world and open the doors to some incredible artists. And I think I probably wouldn't have worked with all the artists I worked with and been so attracted to rap music if my parents didn't raise me how they did and where they did.
Right.
So for me, I was never uncomfortable. I'm not uncomfortable with, being the only white dude anywhere. That's how I grew up pretty much, and I also, I always retain me. I'm never, them dudes who try too hard, right? Nobody really likes that dude who's super wigger, dude. That shit is corny. And I never did that.
It's extra and shit.
Yeah, right. I never got checked for being a cornball. I was always who I am. And I think that people respected that. I've been really lucky. Yeah, I've been really lucky to be surrounded by the guys I was surrounded by and learn a lot. Man, I was taught a lot about culture and systemic racism. It's one thing to study multiculturalism in school. It's another thing to live it your whole life.
Yeah.
And I've been lucky enough to do most of that. And in the midst of all this, I was friends with Ice Cube, and he brought me Del. And I signed Del the Funky Homo Sapien, and I helped kind of bring hieroglyphics to the world. Wow. And if I'd known then what I came to know, I would have signed Souls of Mischief too. But I left it on the table for Stretch Armstrong and Daddy Reef, who were working at Big Beat to sign them. And the deal ended up going to Jive. Or I would have signed them too. And I should have. But, I was also, I've been around the Native Tongues. I've been around, some really great movements in music, Soul Assassins and hieroglyphics. So, it's like, man, that one period of time.
Yeah.
And I've done stuff that sold way more records than that. But that to me was like the most fruitful time in my career. That was the time where it's probably the reason I got to do all the other shit I did.
So speaking of other shit you was able to do, years and years later, did you write and produce on that Time of My Life for Macy Gray on the 8 Mile soundtrack?
I did. I wrote it and produced it. I had done the Everlast records, and that was like a big record. So I did that. And then I did Santana. I did a song on the Santana record I wrote.
Now you got a Grammy for that, right? Yeah,
I did. A 20-time platinum record. And I worked with Korn after that. And I was doing everything. I was just doing a whole ton of shit. And I had a friend, these two guys, Dominic Trenier. He managed Mark Ronson then. He passed away, rest in peace. And he was my manager when we fell out, and we never made up before he died, which sucks. But his man really, Jihad, he was my boy, and he was like, "Yo, I want to take you to go meet Macy." And I went in the studio, and she was there with Mark Ronson and Dallas Austin, which was bugged out. I didn't really know Dallas, but
Dallas is underrated too.
We knew each other. Maybe I don't really like his music, not for me, but he always did what everyone else did. He could copy everyone's style. He was good at that. But anyway, he's an R&B dude. I like soul music. I'm not an R&B dude. So I was hanging out with Mark, and he was having some problem locking the tape. I helped him lock. I was like, set the offset at 10 seconds, and this might help you. You got an SPX 80, and he locked the tape. He's like, I never tried that before. I was like, yeah, that works every time. He was like, thank you. And I guess when I did that, I kind of impressed some people in the room. They were like, oh shit, this dude's on the shit. And I had a CD of beats to play Macy. They just wanted me to play the music, and I played the shit in the other room. And the second to last beat I played was the Time of My Life beat. And I didn't even want to put it on the CD. My partner, John Gamble, rest in peace, was like, that shit's dope, put it on the CD. And what's crazy about that is I bought a melodica because I like this dude, Augustus Pablo. He's like a dub artist. He made this record, Augustus Pablo versus Uptown Rockers. And I thought it was such a cool record. So I decided I could play some keyboards. I was going to learn to play melodica. And I learned to play melodica, and I just heard a record. I was like, I'm going to replay that on the melodica and change a little. And I played it, and that's the sound. The Time of My Life sound like an accordion, but that's a melodica. And I played it on that, and I wrote the song, and she loved it. And she said, well, I got a shot to do this song on the 8 Mile soundtrack. If you want to do it, maybe we can make it happen. And one thing led to another. We ended up doing the song, and I got the song on the album, which is crazy because like a week after that, I was in New York. I was working on an album with these guys at Fun Loving Criminals. I was tracking the album out. I got a phone call I got a call at night from Young Z. He said, yo, I'm on the tour bus with Eminem in Atlanta, and they want this song that we did. That's my M for real. And I was like, they do? So when I did that record, that was a throwaway record. I was playing keyboards on this one. I was like, I'm gonna be like Dr. Dre. I can play a little bit. So I'm playing everything on. I had a Moog. I played it all. And the beat is almost like it's like a bounce beat, like Southern style beat. And I made this shit dumb quick. And he played it for them, and they loved it. Then I got on the phone. He was like, yo, we want to fuck with this. This shit is crazy. M is in the background. He's like, yo, I want that on the soundtrack. I knew M about this much. I didn't really know him, but he knew all my friends. And I got the call from Paul Rosenberg and Mark LaBelle. They said, yo, we're up against a deadline. Can you do it this fast? And we figured out the money. I took a little short on the Macy shit. It got a little contentious. So they made it up for me on this one. I went and did it. I had 2 songs on the soundtrack. I went to the party when the soundtrack came out. The soundtrack came out real quick. It was like I did the shit in like August or September. She was out in like October, November. It was still warm out when it came out. So, and they were like, no samples. I was like, I don't sample no more. None of those records had samples in them. So they didn't have to get cleared.
They had to get cleared,
That's why they made the album. That's probably why they made the album. And they're not stellar songs on the album, but I ended up with 2 songs on the album that sold like 10 million copies. So, and I met 50 at the release, and M was there, and that was just fucking cool, man. It was
you know what's funny, Dante, man, from running with the Beastie Boys to going through Def Jam with Leo and all of those guys to going through Tommy Boy Electra through the 90s all the way up to the 8 Mile soundtrack. And man, you've lived quite a hip-hop life, man, basically 4 decades in the genre, man.
Sometimes it comes and goes sometimes. I've had years where I don't love it. I'm going to try and do something else in my life. I had a marketing company for a couple of years. I did all this shit with a couple of brands, 10 Deep, Diamond Supply.
It's easy to get burnt out.
Yeah. And I was like, I've also had different iterations what I did. I was a A&R guy. Well, I was a tour manager. Then I'm an A&R guy. Then I'm trying to be a songwriter. That shit didn't work. Then I became a marketing guy. Like I'm a record producer, songwriter. Then I did a marketing thing for a couple of years. It was all music marketing. I was kind of successful. I ended up becoming creative director of Pro Kids for a year. All this crazy shit. And
So you
then
got a lot of information. You got a lot of this in your Son of the City, man. Your memoir.
Yep, it's all in there. You know, Steve Rifkin kind of saved my life again. He gave me a job, and I helped sign David Banner and do some other shit there.
Wow.
Steven is one of my best friends. I love him.
Okay.
And then I ended up getting a job at ADA after my marketing company was kind of run its course, and of course I helped bring Macklemore there. I signed Little Dicky, love him or hate him, he's a star. I signed Big Frida, which was my fuck you to Donald Trump. I was like, what's the craziest thing I know? I'm gonna sign a black trans artist just to show the Republicans they could fuck themselves. So I did that.
So right now, with you know, you got the memoir out. Anything else you're doing right now with music or film or anything?
Yeah, I have a label with Rock Nation has a company called Equity. It's their distribution company. So I just did a label deal with them. Okay. Stimulated 2.0. I'm bringing Stimulated back. I signed a couple artists, Lord Sco. I got my man C.S. Armstrong, who's a soul singer. Okay. Working with this cat, Wise Boy Jeremy. I'm A&R and helping out with Euro Droog's record, which are gonna go through there. A whole bunch of other shit, man. I'm gonna have my hand in 5 to 6 records before this time next year comes around, and writing. You know, I optioned a screenplay before the strike.
Okay.
I'm working on a project with RZA, which I'm not allowed to talk about.
Right. No problem.
You know, and when the strike's over, we'll go back out there. Me and Cheo Coker, who I'm allowed to talk about this one because the deal's done with us. So I'm working on an adaptation of sorts of my book, a fictional version of my life with Cheo Coker, who created Luke Cage and worked on Ray Donovan, wrote Creed 2 and the Biggie movie and a host of other things.
Right.
And me and him are, you know, we wrote the screenplay and, you know, we're about to go out with it, talking to people. We're talking to actors before everything imploded. So when the strike goes out, I'll be out there pitching 2 things, and hopefully my film will get made, and I continue to write in the middle of working on another book. But I'm also involved in a lot of music right now, which is great. Everything I do always goes back to music at the end of the day. Right. Somehow, some way, it's always there. It's like, you know, it's like the mafia. You can never get out.
Every time I try to, you bring me back in.
Every time. And, you know, look, there's always a check there for me. Yeah. Every check ain't the right check. I worked at Warner Music Group for 9 years. And I will say I walked away from it, not feeling burnt out, but feeling like the major label world that I thrived in for more than 20 years wasn't anything I would ever do again.
Gotcha. It happens.
Yeah, I just, you know, I'm too old. I'm too opinionated. And I'm not the guy who's going to go, like, I probably won't go find little Uzi Vert.
Right.
But I'll find Action Bronson.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, you know, that's part of it.
You're still going to find something that you enjoy as well.
And, you know, there's a whole world
out there. Which is a conflict sometimes with a major label.
There's a whole world out there of stuff that is there for me and successful. And look, if I don't work at a major label, I don't sign Little Dicky. I don't sign Made in Tokyo probably. I probably don't sign Ugly God, things I sign. But I probably sign Big Frida and some other stuff. So, you know, it checks and, you know, you got to weigh it all out. And there's a whole world out there that's, I call it like the Run the Jewels world. It's this world where it's very successful, but in its own accord, as opposed to playing a major label game. And that's the game I'm playing right now.
Cool. So real quick, I got to get your top 5 albums, man, top 5 MCs. It ain't got to be the best, but who you like, you know what I'm saying? So I know we had talked at one point on Twitter saying, I think you love Midnight Marauders maybe as much as I do.
Yeah, that's my favorite. That's my favorite.
That's my favorite album too.
I don't have like a first favorite, but like there's the records. I'll just name 5 I love.
Yeah.
Ready to Die, Midnight Marauders, The Chronic, America's Most Wanted, and the first Cypress Hill album. Honorable mention, Stakes is High, De La Soul.
Listen, that's my favorite De La album. You know what I'm saying?
It was a great album because they were confrontational. They had a lot to say. They've been away for a few years, and they were like, we're going to set the record straight. Fuck it.
Yeah, my favorite, man, is my favorite album is Midnight Marauders. My favorite rap song is Lyrics to Go. But I'll go with Midnight Marauders, Illmatic, Only Built for Cuban Links, The Chronic, and I'm going to probably go with ATLians or Equipment now.
So you know what? You named like 3 other ones because 5 is just I didn't think about it. I just went off the top.
Yeah.
You know, ATL. I think Aquemini is. I mean, all their records are so good, but Aquemini should be on my list. If I'm doing, you know, and this is in no order. I do top 10. I would say Aquemini is on there
Yeah.
for sure. The Blueprint, Strictly Built for Cuban Links, Illmatic for sure. Those are all on there.
Yeah, you can't lose with them. But on a side note, too, I just posted recently. Man, I was riding the other week and listening to Most Def Black on Both Sides, man.
A great
and I
album.
said, if I was introducing a 12-year-old kid to hip hop, that's one of them albums I say, take this.
I would if I'm gonna introduce the babies to a record,
just
I'm going with
listen to this all the way through because Most Def.
I lost you.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, I mean that record's great, man. I would, you know, for me also, Low End Theory, man. That's another one, and that's when I raised the kids on. Like Low End Theory is one of them joints. Illmatic, you know, shit, man. America's Most Wanted.
Amazing album.
That shit is incredible, man. That shit is so cinematic, and of course, you know, Ready to Die is amazing as well. You know, there's so much great shit, you know. And
so when speaking of these albums, what about the MCs, man? Like 5 MCs that you go to MCs.
Big is always my number one.
Okay.
And you got to do eras. So I'll do the eras because the eras you got, you know, the three greats. You got Kane, Rakim, who's my favorite in any era. Kane,
mine
Rakim,
too.
and KRS-One. But if I'm doing the 5, I'm going Big. You know, Rakim, Big, Jay, Nas, and number 5 in that like lineage, because I'm talking the modern era, Kendrick Lamar.
Listen, I'm so glad you said that because I'm gonna tell you this. First, I'm gonna tell you my 5, but I want to say something about Kendrick. So mine, Rakim the God is the GOAT for me.
He's
Nas is my favorite. Nas my favorite MC. So I got Rakim, Nas, Biggie, KRS-One, and Jay-Z probably. You know what I'm saying? But Kendrick Lamar to me is a throwback to those 80s and 90s MCs who could craft a song, could craft an album, could follow themes, multiple flows, could perform, got star power, but also started as Lil K Dot in Compton, freestyling and doing mixtapes. I mean, the dude is hip hop. Amazing MC, man. Kendrick Lamar is a great MC.
Yeah, he's like one of the guys now who's good enough to go toe to toe with the heavyweights. And
Thank you.
There's a couple guys I left off. Andre 3000,
yeah,
and Buster, because you know I'm sentimental. I put Buster in there too.
I mean, he's a legit great MC. One of the greatest performers, underrated lyricists. Everybody know he can flow, but Busta Rhymes got lyrics.
I mean, you know, when I think about the guys who I really, really, really enjoy listening to, though, like Jay, to me, he has the best catalog.
Okay.
His catalog, to me, he has the most great albums, and even 444 was amazing to me. He's just he is a bad motherfucker. He's so entertaining to me. So, you know, I listen to him like still all the time. And Andre, his output wasn't that big, but he's so good, man.
He really is, man.
So
but
good,
I'm gonna tell you, he's so good. But that's to show you how good, and I always say how great Big Boy is. Because if you listen to them Outkast albums, there's a lot of songs with them they go neck and damn neck. You know what I'm saying? And Big Boy is not to be fucked with. You know,
if Big Boy,
the MC,
if Big Boy wasn't an Outkast, we'd be talking about him. He'd be like, you know, Scarface or somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. Well, look, man, the hip hop music, man, you've done it all, man. I appreciate that. But before I let you go, you know, we got some quick boxing. We got to talk
boxing. And you know, like, look, I grew up watching boxing with my pops and my uncle Sid, my pops' boy Pete, my man Pedro. We grew up in the house watching boxing. Like boxing and basketball is like me and my pops is shit. That's what we bonded over. So I've been watching boxing and basketball since I was a little kid, and I love boxing. Like. Boxing disappointing now. I will tell you, I'm more of a UFC guy these days. Yeah. It's just more exciting. I've seen one too many bullshit decisions in my life, and it made me like not believe in boxing anymore. But the way I did as a kid, but man, boxing's the shit.
Yeah, man, I have a love-hate, man, sometimes because of that as well. You know what I'm saying? Now, me personally, I'm a black belt in Taekwondo. I used to box and stuff growing up. So I've been around boxing my whole life. But Sugar Ray Leonard is my favorite boxer. You know what I'm saying? And I followed his career from as long as I can remember. You know what I'm saying? But I studied. I still watch white box. I still watch the old tapes of Sugar Ray Robinson, Henry Armstrong, whoever. I watch all of that shit still.
Yeah.
I love
Rocky Marciano, whoever it is. I watch
all this.
I watched all the film. I boxed too as a kid. I boxed at the Kingsway in New York.
But my beef with you, Dante, is this damn Floyd versus Castillo one fight.
Yeah, I think Castillo won, man. I think it was
come on,
I just didn't. It was the closest fight that Floyd ever had.
It really is.
Floyd beat his ass in them rematch. He fucked him
he
up.
did. Look, but I had it the same way the judges had it personally, but I'm going to tell you what I did. I watched it like 5 times. The first time I rewatched it, and I'm listening to that damn commentary, I was like, man, what is Larry Merchant talking about? Me personally. So I watched it the third time with the sound off, and I had a 7-5 Floyd. Now, at worst, I thought, and I'm being generous, me personally, because I think it's 7-5 anyway, I thought it could be a draw. You know what I'm saying? But the first 4 rounds, Dante, Castillo didn't win a round, man.
And you're not
couldn't
wrong
win.
about
He
the
didn't
start
win
of
the
the
final
fight.
8.
I feel like the end of the fight always counts more.
He came on strong at the end.
And I was thinking
he left an impression.
Yeah, the 12th round, he beat us at 10, 11, 12. He wins those 3 rounds.
He did.
To me.
He did.
So to me, I just thought he won the fight. But, and this is part of the thing, boxing is always subjective. There's been a lot of fights like that over the years. I don't like Floyd as a fighter. To me, he reminds me of Pernell Whitaker, but I like Pernell better. Pernell mixed it up a little more.
Pernell had more crowd, more excitement.
And he fought more. He mixed it up more.
He did.
Floyd,
he did not.
Floyd is the greatest defensive fighter I've ever seen. He's unhittable, right? And he clearly knew he was he's a world-class fighter. A lot of guys he fought weren't in his class. Very few were. And Castillo probably wasn't even in his class. Like the guy who probably could have gave him a fight was Diego Corrales, right? But
he beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, right. He kicked his ass. So, I always thought Diego was like maybe going to give him a fight. He didn't.
That's when he was still Pretty Boy Floyd. He wasn't Money Mayweather yet.
Ricky Hatton was a bum. I don't care.
He was a bum, but I will say this. And there's a YouTube video I told this other guy I was debating with one time on Twitter about when Floyd was still Pretty Boy Floyd. He had beat somebody's ass real bad, and he called out Spatafor, Shane Mo. Shane Mo said, "I'm going to the dentist and going on vacation," so he avoided Floyd because there wasn't no money in it yet. De La Hoya avoided him, and Hamed avoided him, and he said, "I want to fight the Prince next." Larry Merchant said, "Floyd, Hamed is not going to fight you." You know what I'm saying? So it was the gift and the curse before he became Money Mayweather because he was too big of a risk and he wasn't going to make no money off of him early on.
Also, you know what? When Shane Mosley was the best in the weight class and De La Hoya, Shane was old almost. He didn't want to fight the young boy like that. I mean, he's just being smart. He's just being smart. But Shane Mosley to me was a tremendous fighter. Like he beat De La Hoya. I thought he beat De La Hoya. I thought he beat him twice. He got the decisions twice. That one fight is really questionable.
The second one was very close.
It was close. Could have gone either way. I watched that fight. I watched that fight at B-Real's house with Gip, Sleepy Brown, Everlast, and a bunch of the Soul Assassin dudes. And they, Sleepy and them, they showed up. Gip, and I knew Gip. And Gip was like, he looked at the room full of essays. And was like, oh shit. He's like, where the fuck am I at? And I was like, you good? You good, man? You come on, man. Everyone is, it was just fucking mad funny. Me and Gip always joke about that. But yeah, we watched that fight together, and we all thought that Shane won.
Yeah. Now Shane, I give Shane credit for he was game to fight anyone because those 2 Vernon Forrest fights and those 2 Winker Wright fights, he should have never fought Winker Wright.
Man, Vernon
Winker
Forrest,
Wright is down middleweight basically.
Vernon Forrest beat his ass in that one fight. He fucked him up. But
then Vernon Forrest couldn't even beat Mayoga sorry ass.
Yeah, it's weird. And that's part of the beauty
Styles
of fighting.
Make fights.
Exactly. Styles make fights because Vernon Forrest wasn't all that, but he had some reason he had Shane's number.
He had his number.
He had his number, man. And Winky Wright, you're right. Winky Wright was really big to be fighting that way.
Look,
So
Shane
tall.
should never fought. Shane should never fought Winky Wright because Winky Wright turned around a couple of years later and had a 12-round draw with Jermaine Taylor, the fucking middleweight.
Yeah, and Winky Wright was a boring fighter. He was a good fighter, but boring. You know, he was
Also
like he didn't,
dangerous, and you're not gonna make no money off of him.
right, 100%. He wasn't exciting. Where like De La Hoya was obviously exciting, you know, but De La Hoya, I mean, you know, Felix
He fought
beat his
everybody.
ass. He got beat a bunch too. Felix beat his ass.
Who?
Trinidad beat his
Man,
ass.
get out of here, man.
Trinidad put it on him.
Dante, go back and watch that fight again.
I watched it
First 7
recently.
rounds, he put a clinic on Trinidad, man.
But he couldn't hurt Tito. Tito hurt him.
He buckled Tito in the 3rd, 4th round.
He did, but Tito hurt him. Tito won that fight, and he got the decision.
Man, Tito shouldn't have won that damn fight.
I mean, I was at the Garden when Hopkins beat his ass.
Yeah, Hopkins beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, he retired him basically.
Now I'm gonna tell you this: I was at Mandalay Bay when Tarver knocked out Roy Jones.
Yeah,
I had a pretty good seat, man. Some friends of mine, and I'm gonna tell you something. When we watched the replay on the Jumbotron or whatever, Tarver's eyes was closed, and he swung and he hit him right on the button and almost knocked him through the ropes.
you know, Roy Jones is funny because he was obviously the greatest in his weight class. Like he was the greatest light heavy middleweight. No one could beat him. But it was like a light switch with him. Like the light got turned and he wasn't the same fighter no more.
You know what he should have done? He should have
Retired.
after that John Ruiz fight when he won the heavyweight title. That's when he should have retired. He shouldn't have took no more Tarver fights, rematch, none of that. Retired.
None of that
Glenn
shit.
Johnson knocked him
Shouldn't
out
have
right
fought
after that.
Jermaine Taylor. None of them dudes. He should have never fought them dudes.
None of those
none
guys. He
of
said
them.
no. I mean,
He was in his mid-30s. He was just old.
Look, his last couple of years as a pro, he took
Terrible.
some very dangerous,
I'm
scary
surprised.
knockouts.
I'm surprised he doesn't like slur his words. I'm surprised he doesn't have CTE, but he seems like he's all there. It's just shocking.
It's very shocking
because most of these guys aren't.
Oh, dog! Look at what's the guy name who Roy fought in the 90s now? James Toney.
Oh yeah,
and
he's
Tommy
slow.
Hearns. A lot of these guys,
Yeah,
Holyfield.
Hearns is slow. Holyfield's slow, and he knows slow too. He slurs his words as Bernard Hopkins.
Yeah, Mildred
And
Taylor was never the same as a Chavez fight.
Never. I mean, I love Bernard Hopkins, but he might have CTE. He slurs his words a lot.
I mean, you know what? Your head ain't meant to get punched, to be honest with you.
Fucking Bernard Hopkins. He's like, besides Floyd, the best defensive fighter I saw.
I would say that.
So hard to hit that guy.
Very hard. Who do you like right now? Who do you like right now as far as current boxers?
You know, I mean, Crawford obviously is a great fighter.
He tough.
I mean, he's good enough to fight all these other guys. Like he could have held his own with everybody. Like
he could.
He was as good as anyone I've ever seen. He's a tremendous fighter. His jab is ridiculous. And he's got a headhunting jab.
And he's stronger than he look.
Much
I've been
stronger.
telling people that.
He's a real fighter. Like he could have held his own with Shane Mosley and all those guys. He might have been good. He might have been good enough to hold his own with Sugar Ray and them. He's a tremendous fighter. Other than him, I'm really not impressed with the fight game. I don't watch a lot of boxing.
I like that guy. I like that kid in Noe though.
I gotta watch him. I haven't been watching too much.
He's a monster.
I'm a UFC guy.
See, I never got into UFC like that, man.
Watch it, man. There's no trick decisions.
No, ain't no trick decisions. You gonna tap out and get knocked out.
Or the decision is going to be a real decision.
Yeah, it's gonna be real.
Yeah, it's never a bullshit decision.
Yeah, it's not too much controversy with that, man. So let me ask you this then. Since we're on boxing real quick, let me ask you this. Who your personal favorite top 5 fighters of all time?
Of all time. So Muhammad Ali, because he's the greatest in and out of the ring. And my father raised me to Ali was a Superman in my house.
He's Superman in a lot of people's house.
Yeah, like his picture was on the wall. Like
right.
It was him and like he was up there with everybody. So
yeah.
Certainly Muhammad Ali. And then Sugar Ray's up there. You know, my favorite fighter was Marvin Hagler. And that fight is so.
You see that documentary on Marvin Hagler?
Oh, man, it was great.
I loved it. I just watched it last week.
I loved it. I watched it twice. I love Marvin Hagler because he had a lot of class. You know, he was an unheralded fighter. He
a real tough guy.
From Brockton, a real tough dude, retired at the right time. After
Yep.
Sugar Ray, he never came back and soiled his rep. He was a great fighter, tremendous champ. And that fight with Sugar Ray can go either way.
It can
Because
go either way.
I used to always think that Sugar Ray won that fight, but I watched it again recently, and I was like, I think Marvin won it.
So I was a part. Me and two other guys. We had a podcast for several years called Championship Rounds Podcast, and we would score a fight every month. And when we did it the last time a couple of years ago, we actually had Marvin edging it out the last time we watched it. I had Sugar Ray one time and I had Marvin edging it one time. But let me say this. I don't think I'm upset about Marvin Hagler about it. Even though Sugar Ray my favorite fighter, I'm a boxing fan before I'm a fan of a fighter. The first couple of rounds, Marvin gave a few away fighting southpaw. What are you doing, Marvin?
Yeah. He was a notorious slow starter. He was always a slow starter, Marvin Hagler, which was to his disc. It always fucked him up a little bit.
He was.
And he was trying to figure Sugar Ray out, but I'll give it to Sugar Ray, man, because in that, I think it's the 10th round, he's like basically out cold on his feet. Like Sugar Ray is just getting his ass kicked. And he comes back and he's fucking throwing haymakers in the 11th. It's fucking crazy. And,
he was.
And Sugar Ray said he thought he was going to die. He said, I thought I was going to die in the ring. Right? He's like, the only other time he said he felt that way is when he fought Duran.
Yep.
And Duran, in that first fight, Duran beat the shit out of Sugar Ray.
But you know why? If you watch the documentary Four Kings, Duran was already in Sugar Ray's head already.
He was.
And so did his wife, and so did his family, just stuff like that. So Sugar Ray came in rattled already, and Duran just overwhelmed him. He calmed down later and won some late rounds, but he had given up too many early rounds already.
And you know what it was? Sugar Ray had never fought anyone like him. So everyone's kind of scared of Sugar Ray a little bit in the ring, right? Because he has power. His jab is ridiculous.
And he's fast.
He's fast as fuck. He's hard to hit. Throws lethal combos. Maybe the greatest counterpuncher of the era. Probably the greatest counterpuncher.
He can hit.
He's a tremendous counterpuncher too. He knocked a lot of dudes out with the counterpunching.
Yep.
So everyone's kind of weary of fighting him. Duran had no fear.
No.
And who the guy who Sugar Ray never fought, who might have been able to beat him.
Aaron Pryor.
Yes. And Aaron Pryor, at his peak, was unbeatable.
Hog time.
Man, hawk time.
Hawk time.
And and he'll never live back. Give me the bottle, the other bottle.
I'm telling you
he'll never live it down. The Alexis Arguello fight. But the second fight, he beat the crap out of Arguello.
He did the second time, but that first one now, that was suspect.
So you know what they say it was, right?
No, I couldn't remember.
So they say it was antihistamines. So because ephedrine will open up your nasal passages, you can breathe more, suck in more air.
Yeah.
So that's what they say it was.
Still cheated.
Cheated 100%. We'll never know. It never got tested.
It didn't get tested, but anytime any advantage, you cheated. And
yes.
He came back out that round and had much more energy than he had the previous round. That's a fact.
I mean, look, Aaron Pryor too. He's a hard luck fighter. No one would fight the guy.
Oh, I remember he went to one Sugar Ray press conference. He was like, "Man, I just want to fight."
Yeah, because
Sugar Ray pushed him off.
Well, they say he used to fuck Sugar Ray up in training for the Olympics.
I believe that. And Sugar Ray, my guy.
And Aaron Pryor was unstoppable. He's Hawk. He was always one of my favorite fighters. Hard luck fighter. I always root for the underdog. So he said Marvin
Hagler, Muhammad Ali, Hawk,
Sugar Ray, because you can't take it away from Sugar Ray. And if I'm going number 5, I gotta think who my number 5 is. I gotta make a smart, wise decision. Maybe it's sentimental of me. I just loved his career was Bernard Hopkins. I just loved him. I like Bernard Hopkins because he fought everybody. He talked a lot of shit. He's got a hard luck story, and he ended up keeping his money. He walked away with his bread.
I'm a fan. I like him. Sugar Ray's my favorite, though.
Sugar Ray is great. I mean, look, there's other guys who we're not even talking about. Guys like, of course, Duran, and then there's like guys who, the guy who died in the car crash, Salvador Sanchez, was a fucking motherfucker.
He was a great fighter.
33-0. No one ever beat him. He was undefeated. No one wanted to fight him in his weight class.
Yeah.
He was a fucking monster. Beat Carlos Palomino. Beat anyone in his way. He was, unstoppable. You got to, if I'm not going B-Hop, it's probably Salvador Sanchez. and then there's a host of other guys, hard luck fighters. Ken Norton,
Yeah,
obviously. Ken Norton was
very tough.
tremendous, very tough, tremendous fighter. Never got the breaks. And I think that's probably my list. Oh, the other guy, Aguayo's in there, of course.
Yeah, he was a great fighter. He was tough.
Fought 75 fucking times.
That's
Fought
tough.
75 times. And then the guy who's undefeated, who retired with the belt, Carlos Monzon.
Monzon, yeah, he was the middleweight.
A murderer. Killed his wife.
Absolutely. Yeah, he was.
He's a gangster.
Yeah,
he was undefeated. He had the most consecutive defenses as a middleweight. I think he had 14 straight. He knocked dudes out. He was a tremendous fighter.
I think Bernard broke it.
He did. He did break it.
So I'm gonna go Sugar Ray, Marvin Hagler, Roy Jones. Roy Jones. Evander Holyfield, man, is one of my favorite fighters. I'm gonna tell you, man, that dude had a heart of size of this room.
So to me, Evander Holyfield is the greatest light heavy. He's not the greatest heavyweight.
Oh,
as a light heavy, he's unbeatable.
Yeah, he is.
Only Michael Spinks was as good.
Yeah, Michael Spinks was a great lightweight. I mean,
light heavy. Yeah, he was tremendous.
Aaron Pryor might be my other one, even though he did cheat that one fight. You know what I'm saying?
And Aaron Pryor's career went quick. He was fucking with the drugs, and it took him out.
That's true. And as a historian, like I said, I watched all the fights, man. So I'm a big fan of Sugar Ray Robinson and Joe Louis, man. Like, I love watching Sugar Ray Robinson at his peak, man. He was like 129-1. He won like 90 fights in a row. That dude could power in both hands, everything.
And in multiple weight classes, he went.
He was gonna win the light heavyweight. He was gonna win. He passed out because of the heat.
I mean, he was
winning.
He's a tremendous fighter. Fought like 100 times plus in the old school. Like he's the greatest. My pops would always say he was the greatest. You also got to talk about Rocky Marciano. Southpaw.
Now I wonder,
knock dudes out.
He did. I wonder, was the mafia involved with some of his fights?
I mean, were any of them close? He beat everyone. He beat the shit out of Jersey Joe Walcott.
He did, and that's the one I give him credit for, because Joe Louis is old as shit. But I give him credit for Jersey Joe Walcott, though. That was his best victory.
I mean, he's a great fighter.
He was. He died in a plane crash, I believe.
Died in a plane crash. He had a very interesting style. Mike Tyson patterned himself after him, the way he fought. Though he's not a southpaw, but the lateral movement, the side-to-side movement, which heavyweights don't really ever get that adept at. It's more of a lighter weight class kind of thing. He was tremendous with that. He had a lot of power. And in those fights, he's just knocking dudes out. He's a great fighter.
So, look, Dante, at some point in the future, man, we're going to end up doing, me and one of my guys probably end up doing a little boxing episode or something, man. We have to talk,
Let's
man.
do it.
We'll have a good time on there.
Let's do it, man, because, I love boxing. If you guys ever watch the old fights again and score them shits, I'll be the third judge. Let me know.
Yeah, we're gonna do that, man. So look, stay on with me real quick, man. Look, episode 32, man. I appreciate you, Dante, man. Like, your journey, man, really inspiring, man. So
thank you.
Like I said, man, this is hopefully people really appreciate not just what you did in the culture, but just what you've done overall, man. Like, outside of hip hop, man, you've done a lot of music, man, and perseverance. A lot of young people want to get in the business. Got to understand it's gonna be ups and downs. It might be times you might have to take a break, but you can't give up, man. If you want to get that success, man.
Man, so it's not for the weak of heart. If you don't have tenacity, go do something else. Stop wasting your time.
There it is, man. Good people. Check you on episode 32, 33, my friends. Peace.
My man. Peace.